Have you ever stepped outside early in the morning, coffee still warm in your hands, and noticed something you hadn't seen in years? The dew resting quietly on the grass. The birds begin their morning songs. The sky is changing from soft gray to shades of gold. Nothing extraordinary is happening. And yet, something inside you feels different. For most of your life, mornings probably weren't like this. They were about getting somewhere, getting children ready for school, packing lunches, beating traffic, answering phone calls before you'd even finished your first cup of coffee. There was always someone who needed you, always somewhere you had to be, always another responsibility waiting just around the corner. But then, somewhere after 60, something quietly changes. One morning, you stand there a little longer than usual. No one is calling your name. Nothing urgent is waiting. And for the first time in what feels like decades, you realize something almost unbelievable. You're not rushing anymore. You're simply living. Many of us spend years believing the best part of life belongs to youth. We imagine our happiest memories are already behind us. We tell ourselves that growing older means giving things up, less excitement, less purpose, less joy. But what if we've understood it backwards all along? What if life doesn't become smaller after 60? What if it finally becomes clearer? If you've ever had that quiet feeling that something about this season of life is unexpectedly beautiful, but you've never quite been able to explain why, then stay with me, because today we're talking about 7 reasons life after 60 often becomes richer, deeper, and more meaningful than we ever expected. And I have to tell you, the 7th reason surprises almost everyone. It's the one people rarely see coming, yet it's often the reason they say these became the happiest years of their lives. Before we continue, if these conversations remind you that your story is still unfolding, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Her Golden Chapter, and turn on the notification bell. Every week, we gather here to celebrate the beauty, wisdom, and quiet joy that comes with this remarkable season of life. Now, let's begin with something almost no one prepares you for. Reason 1. Time finally belongs to you. For years, your calendar probably belonged to everyone else. Work meetings, school schedules, doctor's appointments, family birthdays, holiday planning. Somewhere along the way, your own desires quietly slipped to the bottom of the list. Perhaps you even forgot what you enjoyed doing simply because you enjoyed it. Then one ordinary afternoon, something unexpected happens. You find yourself reading a novel in the middle of the day. Not because you've finished every responsibility, not because you've earned it, simply because you can. Maybe you read 3 chapters. Maybe you make yourself a proper lunch instead of eating over the kitchen sink. Maybe you even take a nap without feeling guilty afterward. It feels strangely unfamiliar and wonderfully freeing. That's when you begin to realize something. Time hasn't increased. You still have 24 hours in a day. But for the first time in decades, those hours actually belong to you. No one talks enough about this gift. We often hear about the challenges of getting older. Very few people talk about the incredible freedom that comes when your days slowly become your own again. And once you experience that freedom, it's difficult to imagine living any other way. But as beautiful as that discovery is, something even more surprising begins to happen. You stop living according to everyone else's clock and start listening to your own. Reason 2. You stop living on everyone else's schedule. Can I ask you something? When was the last time you ate because you were hungry, not because the clock said it was time? When was the last time you woke up without immediately thinking about what everyone else needed from you? For so many years, life had a rhythm that wasn't really yours. You woke up when the children needed breakfast. You stayed awake until everyone else was settled. You planned your weekends around other people's calendars. Even your vacations often felt like work in different clothes. Maybe you remember standing in the kitchen, eating dinner while everyone else sat at the table. Or finishing your coffee cold because someone called your name before you could take another sip. At the time, it simply felt like life. You didn't question it. You just kept going. But somewhere after 60, something begins to shift. Without any grand announcement, your days slowly become your own again. You eat breakfast because you're hungry. You go for a walk because the morning feels beautiful. You stay up late reading a novel simply because you're enjoying it. Or perhaps you go to bed at 9 o'clock because that's exactly what your body needs. For the first time in decades, you're no longer borrowing your rhythm from everyone else. You're finally listening to your own, and there's something deeply peaceful about that. It feels less like creating a new life and more like returning to yourself. Many women describe this as one of the greatest gifts of growing older. Not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because it becomes more honest. You stop asking, what does everyone else need from me today? And you begin asking, what do I need today? That isn't selfish. It's something many of us should have learned years earlier. Because when you finally live according to your own rhythm, something unexpected begins to happen. The people around you may become fewer, but the ones who remain become far more meaningful. Reason 3. Your relationships become smaller, but so much richer. When we were younger, many of us believed that having more people around us meant we were living a fuller life. Our calendars were packed. Birthday parties, school events, office gatherings, neighborhood barbecues, holiday dinners. There always seemed to be another invitation waiting. And while many of those moments were wonderful, some of them were simply obligations dressed up as social events. Perhaps you've experienced this yourself. Smiling through conversations that never went beyond small talk. Saying yes because saying no felt uncomfortable. Driving home exhausted, wondering why spending time with people sometimes left you feeling so alone. Then, little by little, life begins to simplify. Some friendships naturally drift apart. People move away. Children grow up. Careers end. Life changes. At first, those changes can feel like loss. But with time, many women discover something beautiful. The circle becomes smaller, yet the connections become deeper. Maybe today you only have 3 or 4 people you can truly call at any hour. But those conversations are real. There's no pretending, no competition, no pressure to impress. You can laugh together, cry together, sit in complete silence together. And somehow, that silence says more than words ever could. You begin to understand that friendship isn't measured by the number of people who know your name. It's measured by the number of people who truly know your heart. There's an incredible peace that comes from no longer performing for relationships. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself to everyone. You no longer chase people who have already walked away. You stop trying to fit into places you've already outgrown. Instead, you invest your time in the people who make you feel seen. The people who celebrate your joys without jealousy. The people who quietly appear when life becomes difficult. And perhaps, for the first time in many years, you realize that having fewer people around you doesn't make your life smaller. It makes it richer. I'd love to pause here and ask you something. As you've grown older, what's one friendship or relationship you've come to value more than ever? Share it in the comments. Your story may remind another woman just how precious genuine connection really is. Because once your relationships become more meaningful, something else begins to change. You start seeing beauty in places you once hurried past without even noticing. And that may be one of the greatest surprises of growing older. Reason 4. Ordinary moments become extraordinary. Have you noticed something that your younger self might never have understood? The moments that bring you the deepest happiness now are often the ones that don't look extraordinary at all. A quiet morning with a cup of coffee, the sound of rain tapping gently against the window, a bird landing on the fence outside, the smell of fresh bread baking, a grandchild's laughter echoing through the house. Years ago, moments like these might have passed almost unnoticed. Not because they weren't beautiful, but because life was moving too fast to stop and see them. Perhaps you were already thinking about tomorrow, while today was still unfolding. Planning, worrying, rushing, trying to get through one more busy week, one more busy month, one more busy year. And somewhere along the way, ordinary life became something to get through instead of something to experience. But after 60, many women discover something remarkable. The ordinary begins to sparkle. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. You begin noticing the sunlight stretching across the kitchen floor. You linger a little longer in the garden. You smile at strangers more often. You enjoy sitting quietly without feeling the need to fill every moment with noise. You realize that peace isn't boring. It's beautiful. Maybe you've even caught yourself watching leaves dance in the wind or listening to birds sing and wondered why it suddenly feels so meaningful. The answer is surprisingly simple. For the first time in many years, you're truly present. You aren't constantly racing toward the next chapter. You're finally living inside the one you're already in. And perhaps that's one of the greatest gifts growing older gives us. Not more beautiful moments, but the ability to finally notice them. Because once you begin appreciating the ordinary, something else quietly changes. You become much more careful about where your energy goes. Reason 5. You finally know what deserves your energy. If someone had asked you 30 years ago to list everything that deserved your time and energy, your answer might have included almost everyone. You wanted to help. You wanted to be dependable. You wanted people to know they could count on you. So you said yes. Yes to favors you didn't have time for. Yes to invitations you didn't really want to accept. Yes to responsibilities that quietly exhausted you. Sometimes you carried burdens that were never yours to carry in the first place. And because you cared so deeply, you rarely stopped to ask whether anyone was caring for you in the same way. But somewhere along this journey, something begins to shift. Not all at once, quietly. You start noticing how certain people leave you feeling peaceful, while others leave you feeling drained. You realize that every yes you give away is also a no to something else. A no to your rest. A no to your hobbies. A no to your health. A no to your own peace. And that's when your priorities begin to change. You no longer feel guilty for protecting your time. You understand that boundaries aren't walls. They're doors, and you get to decide who walks through them. You stop explaining every decision. You stop apologizing for needing rest. You stop chasing approval from people who were never going to give it. Instead, you spend your energy on what truly matters. The people who love you, the hobbies that make you smile, the conversations that leave your heart feeling lighter, the quiet evenings that restore your soul. This isn't selfishness. It's wisdom. Because after living long enough, you finally understand something your younger self couldn't have known. Your energy is one of the most valuable things you own. And spending it wisely isn't a luxury. It's an act of self-respect. Can I ask you something? What's one thing you've stopped giving your energy to as you've gotten older? Maybe it's unnecessary worry. Maybe it's people-pleasing. Maybe it's trying to meet everyone's expectations. Share your answer in the comments. Your experience may encourage someone who's still learning that it's okay to choose peace. And once you become intentional with your energy, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop looking to other people for permission to be yourself. Instead, you begin carrying a quiet confidence that nothing and no one can take away. Reason 6. Your confidence becomes quiet instead of loud. When you were younger, confidence may have looked very different. Perhaps it depended on compliments, on being noticed, on proving yourself, on making sure everyone approved of your choices. If someone criticized you, you replayed the conversation for days. If someone didn't like you, you wondered what you had done wrong. You worked hard to fit in, to be accepted, to avoid disappointing anyone. But somewhere after 60, something quietly changes. You stop needing applause. You stop explaining every decision. You stop asking for permission to be yourself. Instead, you begin trusting something far more reliable, your own judgment. You discover that confidence doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't need to announce itself. Real confidence is peaceful. It's the woman who says, "No, thank you," without feeling guilty. It's wearing what makes you happy instead of what someone else expects. It's speaking your mind without raising your voice. It's admitting when you're wrong without feeling ashamed. It's choosing your own happiness even when not everyone understands your choice. The wonderful thing about this kind of confidence is that no one can give it to you, which also means no one can take it away. It isn't built on praise. It's built on experience, on surviving difficult seasons, on learning hard lessons, on realizing you've already overcome things your younger self thought was impossible. Perhaps that's why women over 60 often seem so calm. They aren't trying to prove anything anymore. They've already discovered who they are. And that's enough. I'd love to ask you something. What's one thing you no longer worry about that used to keep you awake at night? Leave it in the comments. Your answer may encourage another woman who's still carrying a burden she no longer needs. Because once you stop looking outside yourself for confidence, you begin discovering something even more beautiful. Happiness becomes much simpler. Reason 7. Happiness becomes simpler and surprisingly richer. When we were younger, happiness often felt like a destination. I'll be happy when? When the children are older, when the house is finished, when I get promoted, when I lose the weight, when I finally have enough money. There always seemed to be another finish line waiting. And every time we reached one, another one appeared. But somewhere along the journey, many women discover something unexpected. The happiest moments aren't the biggest ones. They're usually the smallest. A warm cup of tea on a rainy afternoon, a phone call from someone you love, fresh flowers on the kitchen table, watching your grandchildren play, listening to your favorite song while making dinner, laughing until your stomach hurts over something completely silly, the smell of fresh bread, the quiet after everyone has gone home, a peaceful evening with nowhere you need to be. None of these moments would have impressed your younger self. Yet today, they feel incredibly rich. Because happiness no longer comes from having more. It comes from noticing more. You realize that contentment isn't found in perfect circumstances. It's found in grateful hearts. And maybe that's the greatest secret about life after 60. Life doesn't necessarily become easier. There are still losses. There are still disappointments. There are still days that test your strength. But somehow, joy becomes easier to recognize. Not because life changes, because your perspective does. So let me ask you one final question. What if the best years of your life were never behind you? What if they were simply waiting for you to slow down long enough to recognize them? Perhaps that's what growing older really gives us. No fewer possibilities, but clearer priorities. Not less life, but deeper life. No fewer reasons to smile, but better ones. You begin protecting your peace. You treasure the people who truly matter. You stop chasing approval. You appreciate ordinary moments. You spend your time more wisely. You trust yourself. And somewhere along the way, you discover that happiness was never hiding from you. It was quietly waiting in the ordinary moments you used to rush past. Maybe that's why life feels better after 60 than anyone ever told us it would. Not because everything becomes perfect, but because you finally understand what deserves your attention and what never did. If today's conversation spoke to your heart, would you do 3 simple things before you leave? Please like this video, subscribe to Her Golden Chapter, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our weekly conversations. Every week, we gather here to remind one another that growing older isn't the end of the story. It's often where the most meaningful chapters begin. And before you go, I'd love to hear from you. What has been the greatest gift of growing older for you? Share your answer in the comments below. Your story could be exactly what another woman needs to read today. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, take care of your heart, protect your peace, and never forget, your golden chapter may be the most beautiful one you've lived in yet.